They didn't just cross a line, they erased it. One afternoon, I came home and a piece of my land was gone. Not stolen in some quiet legal way, but ripped out of the ground like it never belonged to me in the first place. And the worst part is, they acted like they were doing me a favor. That's when I realized this wasn't going to be a neighborly disagreement. This was going to be a fight. I live out on what most people would call the edge of nowhere, a narrow county road that winds through low hills and scrub oak, the kind of place you don't end up in by accident. My property sits on about 12 acres of sloped terrain, not flat, not easy, but it's mine, every inch of it. There's a small house, nothing fancy, a detached workshop where I spend most of my time, and one long gravel driveway that snakes down to the main road like a lifeline. That driveway matters more than anything else out there. It's the only legal access point to my land. And it wasn't put there by a contractor or a developer. It was carved out decades ago by my grandfather with a borrowed tractor and more stubbornness than sense. I grew up hearing stories about that driveway, how he hauled rock by hand, how he fought erosion every spring, how he refused to give up even when the county told him it might not hold. So yeah, maybe it's just gravel to someone else. But to me, it's history, it's effort, it's family. And for years, things were quiet. Too quiet, some people would say, but I liked it that way. No traffic, no noise, just wind through the trees and the occasional truck passing by. Then about a year ago, everything changed. The land south of mine got sold, big chunk of it, and not to someone looking to build a cabin and disappear into the woods. No, this was money, serious money. Within weeks, there were survey flags everywhere, heavy equipment rolling in, and a big sign at the road that read something like Canyon Ridge Retreat, luxury living in nature. I remember standing there the first time I saw it, coffee in hand, just kind of squinting at it like maybe I'd read it wrong, but I hadn't. They were building a development. Not one or two homes, dozens. High-end cabins, marketed to city folks who wanted the idea of wilderness without actually dealing with it. I didn't love it, but it wasn't my land. And around here you learn pretty quick you can't control what happens beyond your fence line. So I kept my head down and stayed out of it. About 3 months into their construction, I got my first knock on the door. Guy standing there in clean boots, pressed shirt, sunglasses tucked neatly into his collar like he stepped out of a catalog instead of a construction site. He introduced himself as Ryan Caldwell, project manager for Canyon Ridge. His handshake was firm, practiced, the kind of handshake that says he's used to getting what he wants. We made some small talk at first, the usual stuff, weather, the land, how long I'd been there. Then his eyes drifted past me, down toward the driveway, and I could see the shift happen right there in real time. That your access road? He asked, nodding toward it. Yeah, I said, keeping it simple. He took a couple steps closer, like he wanted a better look. Ever thought about paving it? I shrugged. Thought about it, sure. Never needed to. He smiled, slow and polite, but there was something underneath it, something calculating. You know, we're bringing in a lot of infrastructure down south, utilities, road improvements, that kind of thing. Could make sense to coordinate access. Share the burden a little. I knew exactly what he was getting at, even if he dressed it up nice. They wanted to use my driveway, not ask for it outright. Not yet, just plant the idea, make it sound reasonable. I'm good, I said, still polite, but firmer this time. That road was built for one house. He nodded like he expected that answer. Of course, just figured it was worth a conversation. And that was it. He tipped his head, said he appreciated my time, and walked back to his truck. Real smooth, real professional, the kind of interaction that almost makes you second guess whether there was anything off about it at all. But there was. Because 2 weeks later, I pulled back onto my property after a supply run into town, and something felt wrong before I even fully stopped the truck. You ever get that feeling where your brain notices something your eyes haven't caught up to yet? That's what it was. Just off. I stepped out, looked toward the fence line that ran along the southern edge of my land, and for a second I honestly thought I was in the wrong place. Because it wasn't there anymore. Not broken, not leaning gone. About 20 feet of chain link fencing had been completely removed, posts and all, like someone had just erased that section of boundary from existence. And where it used to stand, the ground had been torn up and flattened, fresh grading work stretching across the gap, dirt packed tight, marked with stakes, and those bright orange flags developers love so much. And cutting straight through it was the beginning of a road. My road. Or at least, what used to be mine. I just stood there for a minute, trying to make sense of what I was looking at, when I heard the engine before I saw it. A truck came rolling down from the development side, loaded with lumber, didn't slow down, didn't hesitate, just turned right onto that freshly cleared path and drove straight onto my driveway, like it had every right in the world to be there. Dust kicked up behind it, hanging in the air, and I remember thinking, they didn't just ignore my answer. They decided it didn't matter. And right then, standing there with gravel crunching under my boots and that empty stretch of missing fence in front of me, I knew this wasn't going to fix itself. If anything, it was just getting started. I didn't go inside, didn't even grab a drink or sit down. I just stood there staring at that cut in my fence like if I looked long enough it might somehow undo itself. Like maybe this was all some kind of mistake that could be explained away with a quick conversation. But deep down I already knew better. People don't accidentally tear out 20 feet of fencing and start building a road through someone else's land. That takes intention and confidence. The kind of confidence that says they don't think you're going to stop them. So I pulled my phone out and called Ryan. He picked up on the second ring, calm as ever. "Hey, this is Ryan." "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is Daniel, from the property north of your site." "Daniel," he said, like he was pleasantly surprised. "Good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" I turned slightly, looking at the dirt, the stakes, the open gap where my fence used to be. "Your crew tore down part of my fence," I said, slow and clear, "and they're grading a road across my land." There was a pause, not long, just enough to feel deliberate. Then he sighed, like I'd just brought up something mildly inconvenient. "Okay, I think I know what you're referring to." "You think?" I shot back. "We're just improving the access point," he said, still in that same measured tone. "It actually benefits both of us in the long run." I let out a short laugh, but there wasn't anything funny in it. You don't get to improve something that doesn't belong to you. Another pause, this one a little tighter. "Daniel, look, these kinds of developments require flexibility. We're trying to build something that increases the value of the entire area, including your property." "I didn't ask you to," I said. "And we're not asking you to carry the cost," he continued, talking right over me now. "We can pave the road, widen it, make it safer. You'd be getting an upgrade for free." That word free, that's when it clicked. In his mind, this wasn't theft, it was a business move. He thought if he made it sound like a win for me, I'd just roll over and accept it. "Put the fence back," I said. Silence. Then, softer now, but colder. "I think you're overreacting." I didn't answer that. I just hung up, because at that point, there was nothing left to say to him. I called Vincent next. Now, Vincent isn't the kind of lawyer you see on billboards or TV ads. No catchy slogans, no flashy suits. But he knows land. Boundaries, easements, deeds, all that stuff most people never think about until it's too late. He'd helped me a few times over the years with property taxes and paperwork, and more importantly, he knew my land almost as well as I did. He picked up, and I didn't waste time. I told him everything, sent over photos while we were still on the call, the missing fence, the grading, the stakes. There was a stretch of silence on his end while he looked through them, and I could practically hear the gears turning. Finally, he said, "How long ago did this happen?" "Today," I said. "Within the last few hours." "Good," he replied. "That's actually very good." I frowned. "How is that good?" "Because they didn't have time to bury it in paperwork," he said. "What they did here, this is clean. Clear violation." "Of what?" "Of your property rights, for starters," he said, a little sharper now. "They've created an illegal encroachment on a recorded boundary, possibly interfered with an established easement, and destroyed private property in the process. This isn't gray area. Daniel, this is the kind of thing counties shut down fast." I leaned against my truck, feeling something shift in my chest. Not relief yet, but something close to it. "So what do we do?" "What I do," he corrected, "is file for an emergency injunction. What you do is document everything. Photos, timestamps, any vehicles you saw, anything that shows active use." "They're already using it," I said, glancing down the driveway. "Even better," he said. "That helps us." Within an hour, Vincent had pulled my property plat, the original survey records, easement documentation, all of it. Stuff I hadn't looked at in years. He sent copies over to the county planning department along with a formal complaint and a request for immediate inspection. And here's the thing about counties, they move slow most of the time, But when liability is staring them in the face, they can move real fast. The next morning, just after sunrise, a county truck pulled up. Out stepped a guy in a reflective vest, carrying a GPS unit and a clipboard, the kind of person who doesn't say much because he doesn't need to. He introduced himself as Mark Ellison, land use inspector. Firm handshake, direct eye contact, no nonsense. We walked the property line together. He didn't rush it either. He checked the survey pins, cross-referenced coordinates, took measurements, all while occasionally glancing toward the grading work like he already knew what he was going to find but wanted it documented clean. At one point, he crouched down near where one of the fence posts had been pulled, ran his hand through the disturbed soil, then stood up and looked at me. "They didn't even try to hide it," he said. "No," I replied. "They didn't. We followed the path of the grading all the way to where it connected with their construction zone. By then, a few workers had started noticing us, slowing down, watching. One of them made a call, and about 10 minutes later, here came Ryan. Same clean boots, same pressed shirt, same calm expression. "Morning," he said, like we were all just meeting for coffee instead of standing in the middle of a legal mess. "What's going on here?" Mark didn't even look up from his clipboard at first. "County inspection," he said. Ryan nodded, hands on his hips. "Of what exactly?" Now Mark looked at him. "Straight on. Unauthorized grading. Possible trespass. Destruction of private property." You could see the shift, just for a second. That calm, polished exterior cracked ever so slightly. "I think there's been some misunderstanding," Ryan said, recovering quickly. "Our team was operating under the assumption that this access point was documented." Mark cut in. "Permitted." Ryan hesitated. Mark flipped a page on his clipboard. "Do you have a survey showing this boundary?" Another pause. Longer this time. "We're in the process of." "Do you have one?" Mark repeated, sharper now. "Not on hand," Ryan admitted. That was it. That was the moment everything tipped. Mark nodded once, like he'd just confirmed something he already knew, then turned and walked back toward his truck. He opened the back, pulled out a bright red notice, and started filling it out right there on the hood. The site went quiet. Like, eerily quiet. Engines idling, tools hanging midair, workers watching without saying a word. Ryan followed him, trying to keep up that composed tone. "Let's not overreact here," he said. "We can sort this out internally." Mark didn't even slow down. "You already overreacted," he said. "You tore down a man's fence and built a road on his land." A few minutes later, that red notice went up. Then another. And another. "Stop work order." Just like that, everything froze. Trucks were turned away at the entrance. Equipment shut down. Crews stood around waiting for instructions that weren't coming. And right in the middle of it all, Ryan stood there, staring at those notices like he couldn't quite believe they were real. I stayed back near my truck, arms crossed, not saying a word. Because for the first time since I saw that missing fence, they weren't the ones in control anymore. The thing about moments like that, they don't feel as loud as you'd expect. There's no dramatic music, no slow clap, no big cinematic payoff right away. It's quieter than that. Just the hum of engines shutting down, boots scuffing dirt, people avoiding eye contact because they suddenly realize they've been part of something they probably shouldn't have been. And in the middle of all that, a single red notice flapping lightly against a wooden post, like it's the only thing in the world that actually matters. I remember Ryan standing there, hands on his hips, staring at that stop work order like it personally offended him. Not angry exactly, more like confused. Like this wasn't how things were supposed to go. Like somewhere along the line, the world had stopped following the rules he was used to playing by. He walked over to me after a minute, slower this time, less polished. "You really went nuclear on this," he said, not accusing, just flat. I shrugged. "You tore down my fence." He exhaled through his nose, glancing back at the site. "We were trying to streamline access. This whole thing could have been handled a lot more cooperatively." I let that sit for a second. "You didn't come to cooperate," I said. "You came to take." That one landed. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, just a little. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he replied, quieter now. "No," I said. "I'm making it exactly as hard as it should be." He didn't have a response to that. Not a real one anyway. So he just nodded once, like he was filing the moment away, and walked back toward his crew. Over the next couple days, things moved fast. Faster than I expected, honestly. Once the county gets involved, and there's paperwork backing it up, The tone shifts real quick from, let's figure this out, to here's what you're going to do. In Canyon Ridge, they didn't have much room to argue. No survey, no permits, no legal right to touch that section of land. They built their entire access plan on an assumption that I'd either say yes eventually, or that it wouldn't matter if I didn't. Turns out, it mattered. They were ordered to restore everything. And I mean everything. New fencing installed exactly along the original boundary line, posts set to code, materials approved, inspected, the whole deal. Not just patched up either, full replacement for the section they removed. Then came the road. All that fresh grading work they'd pushed across my property gone. Scraped back, hauled off, recontoured to match the original slope as closely as possible. It took crews nearly a week just to undo what they'd done in a day. And the entire time, county inspectors were in and out, checking progress, making sure nothing got skipped or rushed. But the real hit, the one that actually hurt them, was the reroute. Without access through my driveway, they had to redesign their entire entry plan. The only alternative was on the far side of their property, where the land dipped lower and ran closer to a seasonal creek. That meant extending their main road by nearly a quarter mile, cutting through rougher terrain, installing proper drainage, and building a culvert to handle runoff during the wet season. And none of that happens overnight. Environmental review had to be done. New permits filed. Revised plans submitted and approved. It delayed the project by about 4 months, maybe a little more once everything was said and done. Then came the fines. I never got the exact number, but Vincent heard through a contact at the county office that it pushed well into 6 figures. Between unauthorized land alteration, property damage, and operating without proper documentation, it added up fast. One afternoon, maybe 3 weeks after the stop work order went up, I was out by the fence line watching a crew finish setting the last of the new posts. They did good work, I'll give them that. Straight line, solid anchors, better than what had been there before, if I'm being honest. Ryan showed up again. No sunglasses this time. No polished introduction. Just walked up, hands in his pockets, and stood there beside me for a moment without saying anything. Fence looks good, he said finally. It should, I replied. You paid for it. He nodded slightly, like he deserved that. We've got a new access plan approved, he said after a pause. Other side of the property. I heard. Add some time, he admitted. Costs more than we planned. I glanced over at him. That tends to happen when you build on the wrong land. That almost got a smile out of him. Almost. We stood there a little longer, just watching the crew work. And then he said something I didn't expect. For what it's worth, I didn't think you'd push back this hard. I let out a quiet breath. That's kind of the problem, isn't it? He didn't argue with that. Didn't try to spin it or soften it. Just nodded once. And that was the last real conversation we had. After that, Canyon Ridge kept their distance. Their new road went in on the far side like it was supposed to. Their cabins started going up again, and slowly, the noise came back. Not the same kind as before, not the quiet I was used to, but something different. Controlled. Contained. Like there was finally a line everyone agreed not to cross anymore. My driveway stayed mine. Same gravel, same curves, same uneven patches my grandfather fought with all those years ago. I thought about paving it once or twice after everything that happened, not because of them, but just because I could. But in the end, I left it the way it was. Felt right somehow. Like changing it would mean letting a little bit of that history go. Every now and then, I'll see one of their guests drive past the far entrance, slow down, look around like they're trying to take it all in, the trees, the hills, the quiet. And I wonder if they have any idea how close that road came to running straight through someone else's life. Probably not. And maybe that's fine. But here's the thing I keep coming back to. It wasn't really about the fence. Or even the road. It was about that moment when someone decides your boundaries don't matter, when they convince themselves that what they want outweighs what you own. That kind of thinking doesn't fix itself unless someone pushes back. So yeah, maybe I did go nuclear, like Ryan said. But standing there now, looking at that fence line exactly where it's supposed to be, I don't regret it. Not even a little. Still, I'll ask you this. If you were in my place, and someone tore into your property like that, told you it was for your own good, tried to dress it up like an upgrade, would you have fought it the same way? Or would you have tried to work something out? Because out here, lines matter. And once they're gone, it's a whole lot harder to get them back. If you've ever dealt with something like this, or you think I handled it wrong, I want to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what you would have done, And if you believe some lines should never be crossed no matter the cost, go ahead and hit like and subscribe.